This is Sarah Jones with Jason Eastley on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. We are coming to you shortly after President Biden's address to the nation, during which he explained why he was not accepting his party's nomination. Make sure you subscribe to our free Substack so you don't miss any episodes, and a shout out to our paid subscribers because you all make it possible to keep a lot of essential information free for those who can't afford it. So, President Biden just wrapped up his address to the nation, and we wanted to talk to you about it. I thought it was so powerful, and I walked away from it thinking this was a well-earned victory lap, and it was also a dedication, a very patriotic dedication to the American people and to democracy. I found it uplifting, full of leadership, and focusing on our democracy, the importance of uniting, the things he still wanted to get done, Supreme Court reform, the cancer moonshot, and gun violence, and war in Gaza. The list went on and on. This is a man whose first term in office has been the equivalent of a great president's 2 terms. And that was very clear tonight. What were your thoughts?
It was very clear. Those are very good thoughts. What my first thought was that this was the sort of speech that when future generations say, "What was Joe Biden about?" They're gonna be able to find it out in about 10 minutes and 53 seconds, which was the length of his speech, 10 minutes and 53 seconds. He perfectly distilled who he was, why he made the decision that he made, and why everyone around him frankly expected him to make that decision to not seek re-election when he realized that staying in would put democracy in grave jeopardy. It was really a fantastic speech. People get too hung up on the oratory of whether or not someone is a great public speaker. Biden has never been an outstanding public speaker, but there's something very sincere, grounded, and heartfelt about his speaking.
Yeah, I agree. And I also just want to say that there is no evidence that we would not have won with Joe Biden, and I actually think we would have. I think it had been a closer election, but I think a lot of this was manufactured hype. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to overcome that even when he showed up and did appearances after that debate where he was clearly doing really well. And so it may be, and it looks like this now with Kamala Harris and the energy behind her, that this is just a different time in our country when people are ready for a different kind of energy, and she's bringing that energy. But I was dreading to watching this speech because I was afraid that it was going to be heartbreaking. And instead he came out, the whole time he was so strong. He really seemed, the message just kept being love for this country. That's why he got in the first place and ran against Trump, to protect this country. And that's why he's not seeking re-election. And I thought, I don't know how many people in American history are willing to walk away from power to protect democracy. That was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I think he very well may have still won this election. I think it was just going to be a lot closer than many people wanted to stress out through the next four and a
Well,
half
let's be
months.
honest. It was the people down ticket that
Yeah,
were
yeah.
worried about it, and but
And I think it was just really generally stressful. And what you're seeing partially with Kamala Harris is not just this massive unity movement, but also a big exhale.
an exhale, yeah, there's relief, but I think there's also the sense that the country wants to finish Trump off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's what the
Yeah.
energy she's bringing. She's bringing that prosecutor energy. We all remember her interrogating Brett Kavanaugh in his confirmation hearing. And that's what she's bringing. And that's what the country wants right now. And Joe Biden was so constrained by being president that he couldn't bring that energy. And I don't think that is not his
Yeah,
essence.
it's not the way when the country was in the middle of COVID and needed a reassuring, competent hand,
Right.
that was his time.
Right.
Now things have moved forward a bit. And while I think he still could have won again and served, and I do think he was done a disservice by how things went down in all
Yes.
previous weeks, I also think that he's at a point where when he laid out his legacy tonight, it was like, yeah, okay, if you wanted to walk away, I think you've earned that.
Right. And
You
I
know,
yes.
Mm.
I found his speech very healing, and because the way this went down was so ugly, and it has wounded a lot of people at their core, and they are devastated still for him. And I thought he did again. He came to the table as a leader, and he healed people by saying, "This was my decision. This is what I think is best for the country. I think that I earned the right to serve a second term," which I thought was very important. I'm glad he said that because he did. He earned that. And I hope that he and his family can spend the next years after he's done with his presidency enjoying one another and not being hunted down by Republicans constantly. But speaking of his legacy, I just want to name a few things because I don't know that everybody, and I don't want to bore everybody, but I don't have the latest total on the jobs. Do you remember what it is?
16
16 million jobs. 16 million jobs. It's incredible. CHIPS and Science Act, American Rescue Plan, Inflation Reduction Act, the PAC Act for veterans and their families, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, improving NATO, more people with health insurance than ever. He rallied allies around the world to support Ukraine and protect global democracy. His legacy, I mean, I'm not barely touching on it, and it's just going to go down in history books, and he deserves that. This has been the kind of presidency you don't get very often.
I mean, after listening to him speak, I really believe that he's got what would this be, third, fourth, fifth act left, and that will be helping to protect democracy around the world. I don't think he's done by any stretch yet. His time may be over in the most demanding job in the world, but I think he's got another job left yet. I can't think of anybody, and I mean anybody, on this planet who's better equipped to defend democracy around the world at home and abroad
I agree.
than Joe Biden.
We talked about this yesterday. I think that thinking of a job that Kamala Harris could appoint him to as global statesman.
Yeah, even if she didn't, there's things he can do on his own with his own
Well,
organization.
Well, yeah, but we were just talking about what she might appoint.
What she might want to do.
But yes, of course there's tons of things he can do.
Because when you have somebody who's that brilliant in foreign policy, I don't think any president just wants to let them walk out the door and never tap their mind and experience. And
It doesn't
advice.
get better than Joe Biden when it comes to foreign policy.
Yeah, I thought Hillary Clinton was really good, and she was.
She was, but he has topped her.
He's
I
better.
mean, he's and I don't say that lightly, but
Yeah, we like Hillary Clinton.
absolutely. What Joe Biden brought to the table and always brings to the table is diplomacy, and part of that is that you don't see Joe coming. He is such a strategist, and we will get into how he strategized this exit in a way that maximally screwed the Republicans and Donald Trump, which
Yeah.
I think is, and I'm not trying to say, I don't think he wanted this to happen, and I don't think he was planning this for very
this
long.
wasn't I've seen some stuff online. This was a long-term plan, and I don't think that was the
No.
case at all.
No,
Because
but
we've been hearing for 4 years since he won, the plan was for him to stay and do 2 terms.
right.
And still through this last week, they were still planning on him campaigning and doing things. But I think we talked about this ourselves last night. Whenever he decided that he was going to go and step aside, that's whenever you get talking about this. He strategized it for optimal damage to Trump and the Republicans.
Yeah, I think he is a brilliant strategist. So that he did just by delaying this call after they had their nomination and Trump is saddled with JD Vance now, and that was a really smart move. And you just didn't see it coming. You wouldn't see that coming. That guy that did that We talk about the folksy Joe Biden, but there's another side to Joe Biden, Dark Brandon. He is somebody you don't mess with in a lot of ways. And people don't see that side of him because he comes off, he's got this kind of folksy demeanor. And I think that's absolutely genuine and authentic. In fact, for a bit in this speech tonight, he was reminding me of Jimmy Stewart. I had this like over and over again. I kept seeing Jimmy Stewart in his face. He has
Oh,
that,
shucks Americana.
yeah, but
Love
just
of country.
love of just a genuineness and like an authenticity and an openness and a care for this country in a vulnerable way that we don't see very often. I do want to highlight one thing he said in his speech that I thought, well, there were a couple of points that were really touching to me. What I really liked, the great thing about America is here kings and dictators do not rule, the people do. History is in your hands. The power is in your hands. The idea of America lies in your hands. And that is something that we talk about all the time because it is the truth. But people need to be reminded of that at a time when corporations have so much power. And as we just saw, rich donors think they're running the world. And for voters to be reminded, you have this power. This is your country. I thought that was, and we don't go for dictators and kings here. And was that not a kick in the you-know-what to you-know-who?
That was direct pain to somebody. Could you find it absolutely ironic? I don't know if ironic is the right word. Absolutely as funny as I did that the guy who has been hammered for years about his age, he was the one who sat there and made the really convincing argument that it was time for a new generation and time to pass the torch.
Well,
And he literally made the argument for why Trump should not be elected.
I mean,
The same guy who just been getting blistered for weeks on end for being old and having a bad debate sat there and just said, we need new voices, new leadership, a new generation.
and that's
And yet
exactly
they're
what
people.
that's exactly what I'm saying. Once again, that's a Joe Biden took you to the woodshed kind of moment. And he delivered it with the folksy veneer on top of it. Not that it's fake, though. A veneer is fake, so that's not really what I mean. But the presentation was,
He wrapped it in folksiness.
yeah. But it was he took everything they were attacking him with, little jiu-jitsu move there, and he just put up his shields and said, right back at you, Trump. Take that and stuff it. And now Trump's,
And now all the arguments they used against Biden now apply to Trump.
yeah.
And he's like, hey, look at this new generation of leaders that I helped usher in.
Yeah. I mean, this is a guy, again, the bookends. I keep coming back to this, but for me, the bookends of Joe Biden, the Violence Against Women Act back in the 1990s, and now we put first vice president, female vice president, and then we have, he's hopefully ushering in the first female president.
Isn't a fascinating part of his legacy and career the fact that he was added to Barack Obama's ticket to be the experienced statesman balancing comforting presence? Because Obama was considered such an inexperienced unknown by many. And then he becomes president and he uses those same qualities to elevate Kamala Harris. And as you just said, hopefully get her elected as the next president. When you said bookends, those to me are almost two perfect bookends.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, that's a different point, but they're both true. And that's, again, we keep coming back to this, but it's his service to the country. And I do want to bring out one more quote from him tonight, because I thought this was I don't think this speech could have been better, frankly. The defense of democracy is more important than any title. I draw strength and find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union isn't about me. It's about you, your families, your future. It's about we, the people. And that is Joe Biden. What a gift to this country.
Yeah. Again, the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
Saying the right things.
Yeah.
And with the person with the right values. I don't think we get enough
No,
credit
we don't.
for that. After Trump's lack of values for 4 years,
Right.
he was the right person to come in and help reset everything and restore
Decency.
equilibrium.
Yep. He brought back decency. Unfortunately, we haven't he wasn't able to he tried really hard to restore norms, but Donald Trump being in the picture has upended.
He's still, I agree with you. But, let's not shift him here. He got a lot of bipartisan legislation done that nobody thought he could do.
Oh yeah, I'm
And that
not saying
used to
that. I'm not
happen.
talking about norms,
Oh,
not
you mean like
legislation. I'm talking
cultural
about I'm talking
civility?
about the institutional norms
Okay.
that failed, that Trump destroyed, that Trump undermined, and that still have not done their job to hold him accountable. And I think Biden would have. That was one of the things he really wanted to do, but he's been.
What do you mean specifically? I'm
Well, look at the
very
legal
curious.
system holding Trump accountable. I think there's 80 million, all the ethical lapses that have happened in our government where the Republicans are not holding people accountable. That's not Joe Biden's vision for this country has always been people would play by the rules, people would be ethical, they would follow the established norms. And I know he wanted to reestablish those, and I think he did a hell of a job pushing us in that direction. But the energy from the MAGA crowd, the destruction of America, the undermining of the United States done by those people is going to take a while to fix. And I think it is going to take somebody like Kamala Harris, who is a prosecutor, who can come in and finish these people off.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to take time. We said this privately to ourselves, like one presidential term wasn't going to be enough to fix all this.
Yeah, it's not. And I'm not
And
holding Biden accountable
yeah,
for that. Not at all. He did a hell of a job to try to accomplish that. I'm just saying, I think I know he wanted, in a second term, he would have gotten that. He would have finally righted that ship.
and part of this, like the undermining of the values of the faith in democracy, and the undermining of faith in just institutions in general. I'm not sure that goes away until Trump is gone.
Right. It
And
won't. That's what I'm
Republicans
saying.
I think Republicans have to keep being punished for this.
Yeah, they until they face consequences, which, I mean, I don't know if they ever will, but
To me, it's always been losing elections as a consequence. But
yes, but they haven't lost enough. Remember,
yeah,
I think you and I were writing about their post-mortems after 2008 and then again after 2012.
yeah.
And did they ever change? No, they doubled down and it got worse. And worse and worse. They lost speaker after speaker after speaker because they could not keep anyone because they got more and more radical. And here they are. They're basically terrorists at this point.
That's true.
They are.
It's
That's what they've
true.
become.
They're-
I mean, if you look at the definition of a terrorist, political terrorism, that's what they've been doing for a long time. And it's got now to the point where they're actually committing violence to accomplish political goals. That's terrorism.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're out of control. Have they really been punished enough in terms of losing elections enough to force them to change? No, absolutely not. And that's gerrymandering. We're not going to see change there until the Supreme Court reform, which I was so glad he brought up tonight.
They really need to lose another presidential election and lose it badly.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because that will leave Democrats having been in power for 16 of the last 20 years. And that, when you get into those kind of eras, usually even the most stubborn parties, and I think once Trump is gone, MAGA is always going to be there. And it's not now, it's a strain, it's an infection in their party. So I don't think it ever actually will go away. I think it might be minimized, put back into a corner, but it's always going to be there waiting to pop out. I don't think it really leaves forever. I think they've been so decimated and destroyed and warped and twisted. But looking at them should make everyone feel good about how Joe Biden has handled the Democratic Party for 4 years.
He's done a great job, and I'm really glad that he handled his speech this way. I think he's trying to heal the Democratic Party on top of the country, and there are a lot of wounds in the party right now. And I think there's so much energy for Kamala Harris, and that is so great to see. But even underneath that energy, there are wounds.
I am so glad you said that, because you remember after 2016 what the Democratic Party felt like.
Yes.
And what it was going through. And there was the shock of losing to Trump and the idea that this really awful, well, I don't think we comprehended the level of awfulness and criminality that came with Trump even then, till he was actually in office and started doing things.
Well,
But I remember having to write for like the first 2.5 years, seemed like daily, this is not normal, because so many people were treating these things as normal. And I just felt like people needed to know this was not normal. But the Democratic Party was hurting.
yeah.
And Joe Biden came along.
Well, it was
And
wounded. It was deeply wounded
yeah,
by the divisions between the Bernie Sanders and the Hillary Clinton, that ongoing clash, and the when she lost, even though she won the popular vote, when she lost the Electoral College, people blamed that division for that loss because there were so many people saying I'm gonna sit out. So yeah, that was and now are those people all in the Democratic Party? I don't know. You and I talk about that a lot, that actually there's always a segment that says, I'm going to sit out. And they're like, I'm just going to call it what it is because I'm really tired of. I think that's really immature and a lack of doing your civic duty to sit out an election because you didn't get what you wanted. And I do hope that eventually we can learn as a country that that is not, even now when people are so wounded, and I think they're going to show up for Kamala, but I'm just saying, you've got the Senate, you've got the House, you got to show up for those. We have to show up for those elections too, no matter how angry we are at some of those people, because this is our country and we need to get the change that protects us. And so we have to be smart and strategize. And that's showing up for elections, even when you don't get what you want, and even when the people you're voting for really suck. I mean, there is just an element of adulthood about that.
it's interesting, isn't it, that there's the civic duty element that you just mentioned. And there's also the fact that in his speech tonight, Joe Biden made the case for what Democrats should be out there voting for. And the big criticism from some of the pundit class, the media class, has been, well, Democrats haven't really said what they should be voting for. They only want to vote against Trump. But if you listen closely to Joe Biden's speech tonight, he actually laid it all out. You've highlighted his record as he did, and he laid out the generational change. People can be voting for that. He laid out democracy.
But I do want to say, and he did a great job of all that, and he made it very succinct, which I think Democrats usually fail at. But they have been making this case the whole time. When the media says that stuff, I wonder, are you not watching their appearances? Because this is the case they've been laying out the whole time. Do they get bogged down with all trying to get in all their accomplishments and explain their policies to people? Yeah, that's what happens when you actually have policies you're running on. And you can't just sit on stage and gish gallop and point your fingers at other people and be a thug. You have policies, and it is a burden when you have a press that treats everything like it's a reality TV show.
Yeah, I thought you brought up a really good point that they made it for the first time. When Biden was discussing it, it was simple and clear.
Yeah. And he hasn't done that so well, and no Democrat has.
That's
So
the whole thing before all this, and now it's like
Bill Clinton was good at that. Something he's the great
Barack
explainer.
Obama.
Barack Obama was a good speaker, but he was never simple. He had to rely on Bill Clinton to explain things even back then. Do you remember that?
Remember whenever the switch finally came on for him? Whenever it was the Bush setting the Bush tax cuts, and he just got into the whole fairness thing. And then he finally, it took like 6 years, and you're right, he had to use Bill Clinton before that for health care, for everything else.
Well, so it took him 6
It
years.
took him like 6 years.
That's not great.
Yeah.
That's not his strong point, but he's a brilliant man, but that's not his strong point. I do want to start closing up now because we were going to make this short, and I just want to remind everyone, and President Biden, I hope that you use that immunity the Supreme Court gave you to do something great before you leave office.
Remember, it's not a crime if the president does it.
It's not a crime if the president does it. I say that you just get rid of several of these Supreme Court justices and put some new people on there.
An official act declared it retired.
Yeah, an official act. That's right. That's
And
all it
by
takes.
their own ruling,
their own ruling. They're gone. Bye, guys. We won't miss you. So yeah, that's what I want to leave everybody with. Just the idea of what he is going to keep doing, what he could do, right? I don't think Joe Biden will do that, but you never know. He seems mighty tired of the way things.
He's got the whole presidential campaign on his back now. He's got a
Yeah,
lot of time
He
to
can do what he wants now.
go his own direction.
So leave your questions for us on our Substack, and we will try to answer them during our podcast. This is Sarah Jones on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. And if you are tired of billionaires controlling the news that you see and media corporations embracing fascism, support independent news like us. We put the people first, and you can do that by subscribing to our Substack. Thank you so much.